Good evening and welcome to Spooky Crossroads. I feel a little. This is our second time recording this intro, so I kind of feel like maybe it would be stale if I tried to do that amazing intro I'd start out with. I'd been working on it all week. I wrote it down. I rehearsed it. Basically, what it came down to is me, Balzano, him, Weisberg, show, evil sidekick of Spooky South Coast. How are you tonight, Tim? I mean, if we could ever find a way to get the tech of this show down, we might very well be able to take over the universe. But as of right now, we can't get out of our own way.
It's not like we have like a lot of huge hopes and dreams in this. I mean, we just wanted to learn. Two cameras, two microphones, broadcast. How hard can it be?
We must be missing some kind of brick somewhere along the way because when you look at some of the stuff that's out there, you're like, wait a minute, wait, how are they doing that? We should be able to do that.
Money. That's why.
Money, you think? You think money. All right, hold on one quick second for me because I guess that means that no one was able to hear our amazing. Um, there we go. Our amazing intro music as well because they just said they just couldn't hear you at all. I was talking to myself again. Now they can. Tim, say hi to the audience.
Yeah, hello.
For like the 17th time.
Yeah. Hi.
Yeah. Well, what are you gonna do? We are Spooky Crossroads. We are the evil hybrid of Spooky South Coast, and I guess you would call my primary venture, although I haven't ventured on it very recently, which is Massachusetts Paranormal Crossroads. We have merged to form one invincible force with horrible technology called Spooky Crossroads. I was waiting for applause or something.
We're lucky we can get our mics to work. You want sound effects too?
I know, or a sound person who would actually be able to hit those sound effects on cue.
You know, if we had Blog Talk Radio, we'd have a producer.
If you want, I know I can make like them. Yeah, but it'd be some real creepy guy who always like breathes really hard into the microphone when I call.
Yeah. You guys want me to chime in on this at all, or yeah?
Blog Talk Radio. Okay. And I guess we do kind of spend the first 2 minutes of every show at least insulting Blog Talk, but they've brought a lot to the field.
Brought a lot of clutter.
I'm with you, but the cream rise to the top, and I'm sure there has to be someone who started there who is really influential, and if anything, it's kept some people afloat, having an audience to talk to. Just so you know, I am so not in a positive mood tonight, but I thought I would start with something very positive. So there you go. I compliment the Blog Talk Radio. I hope we actually recorded that because if we didn't, then that might never happen again.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if we ventured into Blog Talk Radio outside of the paranormal world, we might feel differently. I'm sure it's a valuable resource for a lot of people. Otherwise, it's just we're not exactly listening to like a Blog Talk Radio show on how do you feel about the NFL refs, so.
It's so weird to me because the paranormal part of it is so much a part of Blog Talk Radio, at least for me, having done so many of those shows and kind of ushered some of those careers along with advice and what have you. That I just feel like Blog Talk is paranormal radio, but it's not. I guess there's a lot of other stuff there.
Yeah, we forget that because we're so busy worrying about the fact that there's a lot of bad paranormal radio on it. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's some shows that are good. Some people are actually putting in the effort to try to do broadcast quality programming just with that version of technology, and I think that is that's how it works. That's what makes it a great thing. It's the same thing with podcasting. I mean, if a podcast is an actual program, an actual show, and there's substance and there's thought put into it and everything, then it's a great thing. But when podcasting first took off, there was a number of people that were like, hey, let's just do a podcast. Like, that'll be fun. Like, hey, me and my buddies are really funny, so we're going to do a podcast of us being funny, and millions of people are going to download it, and we're going to be the next big thing. And it didn't work. Like, I know somebody that actually tried that. And I'm, like, thinking in my head the whole time, like, you're only funny to yourselves. You're only entertaining to yourselves. It's, and even if it was something that would go beyond just your group of friends, then the problem is, well, how do you let people know about it? How do you spread the word? It's not like one person's going to find it and all of a sudden, you're the top pull on every podcast website.
So just so you know, the podcast aspect of Spooky South Coast may very well have an amazing surge forward, because I know Tim knows, and maybe other people who might be Facebook friends of me or what have you know, that I've become obsessed with Smodcast, and that's Kevin Smith's really kind of network podcast shows. And as I was scrolling through, I offered, hey, wait a minute, hey, guess what? You don't have a paranormal show. Listen to Spooky South Coast. Tell me what you think. Listen to Super Paranormal Crossroads, Spooky Crossroads. And tell us what you think when, kind of like the gloves are off. And I said, and we can get a lot dirtier. If we need to. I have yet to hear back from him, but that was yesterday. So, he's a very busy man. And
Yeah.
But I heard he gets back to a lot of people. So, if anything, I just want to, I'm just waiting for the phone call. I was like, hey, this is Kevin Smith. And I think I would probably kind of flip out a little bit.
If you want, I could have my boss of the paper call you. Although he had gastric bypass surgery, so he doesn't look like him anymore. But he used to look and sound just like Kevin Smith.
I in college, which was kind of the boom, or I shouldn't say the boom, but I should say the burst, because I was, it was required watching it in my college because we were film students that had just come out, and so Clerks had just come out, so we were all kind of a little Kevin Smith obsessed, and gotta say, was a huge fan. Tried to dress like Silent Bob. And the only thing I really had going for me was the weight. So, and the backwards hat, I guess. But everyone that I knew was wearing a backwards hat. So, anyway.
Yeah, we pretty much everybody in the paranormal field, we've got backwards hats and weight down to a science. Not a real science, though.
All right, so I guess I gotta address it first. When we went off the air a little bit ago, and I kind of was just able to talk to some of the people in the chat room, just kind of running a solo, non-recorded show. I was talking about cryptids and people who look into cryptids, which I think is a fine group of people. I've got nothing against people who look for cryptids. One of the things I was saying is, I'm in that chat room. I want to say things. I guess I would say I hide behind the Hilly Rose persona while I'm in there. I mean, pretty much people know quickly that I'm me. But I'm the initial person for a lot of these people, for a lot of the guests we have. I'm the person, and if not the person they initially contact for an interview or to come on in, I'm the person who kind of ushers them through the process most times. And it's very hard to separate that part of the job from the really critical part that wants to analyze and dissect and kind of cut up what they're saying. And you do a great job, Tim, of being able to phrase questions in terms that you can address issues without feeling like you're attacking. But I'm too much of a dick for that. I'm not really good at that part of it. So I usually end up getting extremely frustrated and throwing out some jokes. And usually most nights after Spooky South Coast, I text him and say, dude, I think I pissed off the chat room. But Eric Altman, what were your initial what was your reaction to Eric?
I mean, I've talked to him off the air quite a bit for years, and I just thought that he was a very sound, very normal person, very based in reality type of researcher.
Right.
And he's one of the few other hosts that are out there that I think are approaching their programs with the right idea. So I would think that somebody that puts that level of thought and commitment into their show would do the same into their cryptid research.
So you would probably agree with me when I say then he would be an excellent example of someone out there in the field in terms of that field. If you kind of take like the lowest end, he would be more towards the higher end.
Yes,
The dude was articulate.
Yes.
He was well thought out, and so none of this at all would be any kind of attack on Eric. And we're going to appear on his show on the 27th, which is ending to be the 28th rather, on that Sunday, right?
Yeah, it's a Sunday. Whatever the date is, it's a Sunday.
Yeah. I thought he was great. I thought he was, like I said, very articulate, and I thought that I was enjoying listening to him when he was when he was talking about things that didn't specifically have to do with cryptids. But I could tell in his cryptid that he was a solid researcher. Like, the guy had names, he had dates, but he also had ideas behind things. And so, as I look at a lot of people who are in that field, and I don't want to, I guess that I'm kind of pushing it off for me when, because people who do more than just kind of gather stories, but people who are actively out there looking for it. I think it takes a lot of balls to go and do it, but I don't think that it's necessarily the most valid of fields. And here's why. Okay, so here was my issue. Totally not with Eric Altman. But as he was talking, I'm thinking these things. So I'd love to know the way you guys feel about these issues. Just anyone who's watching this doesn't know, Tim had to leave for a minute. So if you see him bolting, but you don't read the track that says yes, so he had to leave for a quick second. All right, so here's my issue, and I'd love to have some sounding off in the chat room or anything else. Keeping in mind that I'm not talking specifically about people who look for cryptids, but the process or even like the practice of looking for cryptids. The first thing is, and probably the most important for me as a storyteller, as a shaper, if you will, of paranormal things, as not a scientist or as an investigator, which I so am not now. I'm so much more, I would consider probably the researcher, but from the researcher and documenter. So from that perspective, one of my major issues is every single cryptid story sounds exactly the same to me. The details are very similar. The people involved are often very similar. It's one of those things where, to me, it just seems like the same story being told over and over and over again. There's a level of interest or intrigue added if you kind of, are now talking about a flap. So, for example, this weekend we're going to have on Linda Godfrey, and she, is probably most famously known for the Beast of Brer Road. And so that's kind of like a flap. So there's a story to be told there. The story kind of progresses like, here's what happened, here's what continued to happen, here's research, here's how it impacted the town, now here's all these things that happened afterwards that might be related, and here's some history. And all that stuff gives a really good context for the actual aspect of this scripted story being told. But for the most part, 9 out of 10 times, it just seems like the same friggin' rehashing of I'm in the woods, I hear something, I smell something, I look, there's Bigfoot, we stare each other down for a while, Bigfoot goes away, I'm left wondering what I just saw. And for the most part, there doesn't seem to be much variation in that for me. And I remember being amazed as a child. I remember, I think on the episode, Tim's back with us now. Tim, you retold a story about when you watched a documentary about Bigfoot, if I remember correctly. Is that right?
Yeah.
Is Tim not back with
No,
us?
I had my mute on.
Oh, okay.
No, I don't remember. I don't remember talking about that.
Oh, I thought you talked about. I remember watching a documentary when I was a little kid or something like that.
Maybe.
I don't really listen to Spooky South Coast. I kind of just go in there and get agitated.
I don't really listen to myself talk, so.
Well, I specifically remember several different Bigfoot encounters with like the media. So not with actual Bigfoot, but with the media. One I remember, one of the only times in my life I've ever thrown up. I was after I threw up, I was watching this documentary. But I remember very clearly one night waking up. Night by night, I mean like it had to have been like 4 a.m, and I went downstairs I had to have been. It was before I moved back to New England when I lived in Jersey for like 2 years. So it had to have been when I was like either 4 or 5. And I went downstairs and I turned the TV on. My parents made sure at a very early age I knew how to turn the TV on by myself, so I wouldn't wake them up. And watched this documentary and the Patterson film. Is it Patterson film?
Yeah, the Patterson Gimler film.
Yeah, yeah. That was kind of the centerpiece of this. And you imagine we're talking probably 79, 80 was when whatever this documentary comes from. And being, oh my word, that's so amazing. And then over time, I said, well, oh yeah, that's so amazing. Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, I think that, for someone who experiences it, it's very much real. It's very much in their face, and it's very intense. None of that ever seems to really be translated by the story, though. So what I was saying, Tim, was that one of the reasons why it's really hard for me to get into cryptid researchers or hearing them is that all the stories seem the same to me.
Couldn't you say that about ghosts too?
Now, see, so then, okay, so I'm trying to be fair, I'm trying to be righteous, right? I'm trying to walk the good path. And so I start thinking, like, well, aren't ghosts like that? And I'm thinking, no. I mean, I think that you and I, as cynical as we've become, and you and I have had many conversations, that sometimes seems like the storyteller themselves are falling into easy patterns. But you have, if you just kind of getting into ghosts, you have ghosts that might be residual. You have ghosts that might be intelligent and are talking. You have ghosts that shake the bed. You've got ghosts that whisper in your ear. You've got ghosts that might just be cold spots. You've got ghosts that you see walking. You have ghosts that you just hear. You have flashes of light. You've got orbs. You've got all these kind of different things. Cryptid people, and I guess I'm maybe more specifically talking about Bigfoot, but I think it extends, have... I was walking in the woods and I saw Bigfoot. And then every once in a while you have I went outside and saw her eating my pumpkins or something like that. So I think you do get a different variety of ghost stories than cryptid stories.
Right, but I do think that you have many of the same patterns in those stories, the same as you do with the cryptid sightings. Part of it is take away the fact that it's an unknown animal and put any other animal in there. Say you want to go out there and experience a lion in the wild or a mountain lion or something. You know what I mean? Like it's going to be the same type of scenario no matter what. I mean, there's just limitations to what it can be. If it was beyond being just a quote unquote animal, and if it was actually humanoid, and if it would actually have the ability to have speech and interact in that way, then maybe there'd be some differentiation in the stories. But really, I mean, every story that anybody who tracks an animal tells you is going to sound the same. The only difference being, if there's an attack or a capture or a kill.
I mean, I want every once in a while the Bigfoot to start breakdancing, or I want the Bigfoot to be more.
But maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's just an animal.
Right, and if there are any Bigfoot, please feel, free to call me, or to email me about this and defend yourself. I am not putting Bigfoot, or like I said, Bigfoot researchers on trial as much as I am putting just the whole, I guess, Bigfoot media, or having to listen to cryptid stories, just doesn't seem to light my fire. Doesn't seem to get me up.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think it might just be a personal thing. It's just it doesn't do the same for you that other aspects of the paranormal does. I mean, I'll be honest. When it comes to me, I'm very interested. I'm fascinated by those who have these experiences and those who go out and look for it. But it's not. I don't have an overwhelming urge to go out into the woods and look around for Bigfoot.
I mean, it just seems that scientifically, and I guess by scientifically I mean my rational brain, not any kind of actual science, just the science of my logical thinking, which is totally flawed, as anyone will tell you. They seem less plausible to be something extraordinary. I mean, at one point, they were saying something. I'm like, wait, that doesn't make any sense to me scientifically. Like, you have to have a certain amount, a level of species, certain amount of the species to continue. You have to have a certain amount of like, what are they eating? Where are they sleeping? Where are they? Those kind of things, And I guess that's the great thing about ghosts that you can always say, we don't know, and it seems to make more kind of esoteric sense as opposed to something very, very physical, something very, it's a flesh and blood animal. It's something that, and this number is probably going down. 75% of people would say, if it were real, it is a solid object that lives here on Earth, in some place and is able to interact with its environment. And then we have probably a growing number of people who are saying dimensional creatures, aliens, that kind of rationale to it. So it seems to make more sense that a ghost could exist than Bigfoot could exist. And I'm specifically saying Bigfoot here because I do think there are cryptids out there that might just be uncatalogued. But we're talking a huge, predator. I mean, I don't think that you get to be, unless you're a brontosaurus, do you get to be that big without being dominant in your area?
Yeah.
I mean, and which leads me right to my second thing, and Eric Altman would not fall into this category. But it would seem that cryptids and the research of cryptids is so much more the field of scientists, like zoologists, hardcore researchers, not amateurs. Like I really think that it'd be, and maybe you know better than I do, or maybe someone in the chat room. Like, how many people who are actively seeking Bigfoot have degrees in some kind of zoological field, or are, like you were saying earlier, trained hunters that actually have the ability to track something down? How many of them are just kind of like going in the woods looking for things?
Well, I think a lot of them are going to tell you that they're trained hunters, even if they're not.
Right, because that gives them bones.
Right. When it comes to their credentials, say, I'd rather have somebody that has a lot of field research, that has gone out there and tracked moose, bears, every possible other thing that it could be besides a Bigfoot, and have them have all the knowledge in the world of how to find those animals before they go out and look for Bigfoot. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of it is reversed. People decide they want to go out and look for Bigfoot, and then kind of learn along the way, what the false positives are.
Right. It's just kind of as I was listening, some of the things didn't make sense to me. My mind couldn't wrap it around. I was like, but I think that if someone like Eric Altman is out there doing it, he's probably one of the better people to explain it. I thought he did a real good job of making it make sense as much as my mind could have it make sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess in terms of cryptids and writing about cryptids, my personal opinion, I don't know how you feel, I think in terms of communicating a story, not in researchability, not in plausibility, not in who's gathered more information, I think that the younger Coleman is so much more better writer.
Mm-hmm.
I can totally get into, if I remember correctly, his name's Jerry Coleman. I could so much more get into his writing because he seems to be so much more about a story. Is that just my own personal purpose for a story behind my unexplained, as opposed to just a documentation of it? Don't know, but if I've got to buy a book and there's a Lauren Coleman and a Jerry Coleman, I'm going to buy the Jerry Coleman book just because I'm a bigger fan of the way he writes.
Well, I mean, I don't know. Sometimes when it comes to what I choose kind of based on somebody's credentials, and I base kind of on somebody's evolving knowledge within the field. And to me, Jerry's a storyteller and Lauren's a researcher. It's you know what I mean. Like if you want to read a book for purely entertainment purposes, then yeah, pick up Jerry's book. But if you're trying to get a little bit deeper and find a little bit more and have something that you can cite later on in your own research, then you want a Lauren Coleman book. I mean, that's a very generalized
Right,
way of
right,
putting
right.
it.
But and obviously, both are really good at what they do.
Yes.
And I think that maybe it lends itself more to dry writing if because it is in the hands of someone who has to think in very realistic terms and very flesh and blood kind of terms. And so therefore it lends itself more. It's almost like you would lose your. We talked about this on the show and in conversations. How much credibility you have if you start making things fantastic. If you rely too much on the writing style of storytelling when you're trying to communicate an idea about the paranormal, you might lose your audience and they think you're just kind of a writer as opposed to a thinker or a researcher.
Well, I don't want to put myself into Lauren's shoes at all, but and I've never really talked to him about this, but I'm going to guess that he probably feels like he needs to present his writing in a way that it is almost infallible in terms of the way that he writes it. I think that if he got a little flowery with his prose, then it might detract from the seriousness from which he's coming from. I mean, a lot of people that are in this field that are trying to be academic end up having to go overboard, and
Right.
in that need to have scientific justification, and acceptance, they may try to make it sound a little bit more intense than it needs to be. Like Moniz is a perfect example. There's constantly times when he's talking about things I have to tell him, no, stop and dumb it down, because you're using 10-cent
Right.
words when a 5-cent word is good enough, and the 5-cent word is what more people are going to understand. The more people that understand it, then the better off your message will be. I mean, if you're going to talk in, let's just say that if you're going to talk in a certain language, then only the people that know that certain language are going to understand what you're saying, and for one thing, you'll come across as almost being elitist.
Right. Which, if your goal is to communicate specifically to those people, then that's fine. But if your goal is to get the message out, you've got to kind of, what is the phrase? Bring Muhammad to the mountain, or bring the mountain to Muhammad? What is it? I can't remember who you bring to who. There's someone being brought. There's a mountain. There's Muhammad. They're being brought together. So yeah, I mean, and like I said, I think that comes through that, and Lord Coleman is, a highly educated man, and so in his research he takes very seriously, and so therefore, I think you're more likely to get something straightforward. But I know that I think that there's a general interest and a high level of interest among young kids for cryptids, and I know this because I deal with them, but one of the books that was on the high interest book, so we're going to teach it to middle schoolers and high schoolers who are having a hard time reading, is this book. I believe it's called Tales of the Cryptids, and I stole a copy of it from my old school so I could bring it into my my new one. And once again, kids love it. It's great. And I think that if there was someone out there who really was able to kind of merge those two things, could really capture the imagination of younger people. I don't know. There you go. That's a little cryptid thing. So, I sometimes feel like I don't bring that to South Coast enough. Cryptid researchers. When there's so many people out there.
I'll be honest with you. I think that it's one of those topics that there are shows that focus pretty much solely on that topic, and they do a great job with it. And I think for our show, it's something that is a good once in a while topic.
Right.
But it's not something that we can continually keep going back to again and again, because I just think that the audience doesn't have that interest level. I think that cryptids are lumped in with the paranormal entirely too much. I think that there's a difference between a cryptid and a monster. Somebody who researches Mothman is doing monster research. Because while Mothman could very well be a flesh and blood actual creature, the reports and the stories lend themselves more to the supernatural. Whereas Bigfoot, until somebody sees one beam off on a ship or blink in and out of existence right in front of them, to me that falls more under the idea of being a creature, being an animal, and needs to be looked at in that regard. So it's kind of a strange line that I put on it between being a good monster story and being a good unknown animal story.
Do you friggin' rock? Wait a minute. Yes, exactly. I wholeheartedly agree. And I hadn't even thought of it that way. But yeah, there is a huge difference between a monster story and a cryptid story. And I guess to me, cryptid stories are friggin' boring. Monster stories are awesome.
Yeah, well, I won't say that a cryptid story is boring necessarily, but I will say that it's not paranormal to me necessarily.
Right.
And if I can't extrapolate out a bigger picture from it, then it does kind of lose my interest level a little bit. I mean, if Bigfoot turns out to be an American gorilla / human hybrid, I don't know, like whatever it could possibly be, but it's an animal in nature, then to me it's like, okay, that's really cool that we didn't know about it and it's different, but I there's nothing bigger to make out of it except that here's this animal that eluded mankind for all these centuries and now we've discovered what it is. Whereas monster stories are, you can totally extrapolate things out because it becomes either maybe an avatar for the paranormal activity in an area, such as Mothman, maybe. Maybe it becomes sort of a harbinger like Mothman, or maybe it becomes, the key between UFO sightings and ghost sightings. Like the fact that it has a bigger role in that regard is what makes it interesting to me. It's not necessarily the story itself, but just what the story could mean.
I mean, I think I love a good werewolf story.
Mm-hmm.
But part of that is that there's that aspect of fear to it. There's that aspect of the person was attacked. There's something vicious about it. There's something tense-filled. There's all this kind of context to it when you talk about things like familiars and stories of people who, a wolf was shot and the person who was missing at that time, has a similar, like there's this kind of, like you were saying, a bigger picture, a context that it's put in, that it becomes part of a bigger picture. Even if you take the things like in the Bridgewater Triangle, and I guess there the Bigfoot are more of a rock star than in some places which seem to only have that kind of thing, but they're part of a bigger context of wackiness that's going on, and so they're more interesting to me. I guess maybe it's just my, like I keep saying, it's my own little kind of like, dude, that doesn't entertain, that you're not getting interested enough. I want to be entertained. Entertain me, big giant beast. So,
but that's you too. I mean, it could be different for other people. I mean, I know that Moniz is pretty interested in them all, and to him, maybe there is a bigger picture to them, and maybe they do tie in. But I look at it like this, and you mentioned werewolves. The werewolves to me are a virtual impossibility. I just can't see any possible way that a human being can morph into a wolf. But that isn't to say that there isn't interesting stories that probably are true. When you look at you know what I mean. When you look at that, and when you look at,
I do.
And then you look at stories like we'll be talking to Linda Godfrey this week, right? So you're looking at stories like the Dog Man, or these two-legged dogs that might have existed at one point. Well, then now you're talking about something that could exist and could be out there that we just don't see. I mean, there's little bits of truth in all of them, and I think that's what keeps certain people going, and then there's certain elements of the fantastical in them, and that's what keeps other people going.
Right. And I would probably say that I'm more interested, although I think it hasn't won me over, but I'm more interested in, like I was saying, the new theories that these could be. Whoa! And Jackie Bear clicks over on my other Skype.
Invite her over.
I don't think, can we get Jackie in on this?
I think you could add her in, but who knows where things are going to go from there.
Especially because there's no holds barred in the podcast.
That's true, but she's probably contacting you for a private conversation, and
she asked me what I was wearing. I'm just kidding.
She wouldn't know that she's on a show. I had an
She's
interesting Facebook chat with her this week.
Did you really?
Yeah, I was trying to get her.
I almost wait. I almost kind of feel like both of you were cheating on me. 'Cause I'm like I'm like the go-between between the two of you. So I almost feel like they're talking without me. Go ahead, continue. Sorry.
Well, no, I mean, in this particular instance, I was commenting on something she had put up, and I asked her, I said, did Chris mention to you the possibility of getting Ronnie to call in that night? And she's like, yeah, it's not a good idea, and there's a lot of things that happened around it, and it's just not a good idea, and I don't really want to talk to him that much myself, type of thing. And so I guess while she was talking to me about it, her iPad went haywire. So she actually recorded a video of it and tagged me in it, and she made this video, and she's like, Tim, here's what happened to my iPod when we were trying to talk about Ronnie, just to show you the kind of stuff that happened. So I was like, all right, well, we don't need that happening to our studio while we're on the air. So we had a fun little conversation there, and I was gonna save that story for when we're on the show, but when we're on Spooky South Coast. But there you go, an exclusive to Spooky Crossroads.
Now let me ask you: have you had any issues while you've been reading the book?
No, I did have some strange goings on while I was reading it, but I mean, that I almost feel that I've for bad, not for good or bad, but for bad, I've almost kind of become. I'm in the outer circle of the Amityville story now, I think.
Right.
I think that I've stuck my nose a little too far in it, and I think that it's kind of sticking its nose back in my face.
Yep.
So I would not be surprised if things happen while I'm reading the book and while I'm pondering the case. So I think that might actually be creeping me out. You know what I mean?
Right. I mean, I know that we were it's actually kind of interesting to look at it and be like, oh yeah, we almost wrote that book. I have not picked it up since the second time I opened it, read it, like was reading it, like doing a full reading session. I can usually read things pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. Because I was on a 3-hour ride to and from Orlando, from where I am, and my phone started going crazy. I started getting texts from her, oddly enough. Like almost as if she knew I was reading it, which is always weird and crazy.
Because she does know that you're reading it.
I mean, like at the moment I was reading it, it was kind of like, hello, and then, it's kind of was just like once again, it was the big A kind of creeping in through the window again. I'm like, dude, why am I not learning this? Why am I not learning this lesson? Don't talk about the A. So interesting. Do you think you're going to go solo this time, or should we do the tag team interview with her again, or what?
Well, let's see how the technology works that night. I'm down with definitely the two of us doing it together. I think that would be the best.
Yeah.
But we'll see if we can pull it off.
It's just funny how and maybe after it hadn't been having played itself out, I was very much like, okay, dude, she's really awesome, but you kind of got to know how to handle her.
Right.
And I probably set up way too much. You had to handle her with kid gloves, like this whole situation, rather than just being like, dude, just interview her, see what happens. So I'm not sure if you felt like as you were doing it that you were like, ooh, heavens, Chris is here. I don't know what the hell this woman's talking about right now.
I don't really remember.
Yeah.
The minutia of it. I mean, I think it worked pretty well. I mean,
yeah,
it's
it was
definitely
a great interview.
One of my favorite interviews. Yeah.
Yeah. So, watch this segue. Yeah, it's such a great interview. It deserves an award.
Yes, it might have won the 2010 awards if we were doing them back then.
Okay, so alrighty, so we got to get to this because I don't know if it's just one, if it's the VW bug syndrome or whatever, but awards seem to be, and paranormal awards in particular, seem to be like the buzzword of the week. I'm not sure if it's just everyone I know is reposting these same kind of things, but it just seems to be all over the place, these paranormal awards.
Right.
And
well, let's specify here. It's not like
okay.
there's one, Academy of Arts and Sciences that's selecting the Oscar. I mean, there's
Right.
numerous, we'll call them outlets, that are creating their own paranormal award shows and awards things. And there was one here in I think it was Massachusetts and New Hampshire or whatever, where they actually had a banquet.
Oh,
They
wow.
actually handed out actual physical awards. There's other
Aw.
ones where it's like an online thing, and I don't mean to sound like I'm trying to big time people here, but how legitimate is a paranormal award show in Massachusetts if Spooky South Coast isn't involved?
Right.
And that's
Right,
that's not to pump my own ego up at all, but how many paranormal radio shows are there on the actual radio in Massachusetts? 2, 3 maybe?
Right.
What's the most recognizable? I would have to say us.
A Ron Kulik show.
I mean,
Oh!
is he still on the radio?
I don't know.
I think he's just on that Toji net.
Yeah.
But-
He's completely Toji now.
But I don't even think he was involved with this award show.
No, I mean, and we probably are approaching this from a very different perspective because, I don't think that there's anything necessarily wrong with having an award thing. I mean, you and I we were talking about this probably about a year ago. We were talking about the Spookies.
But it was
where
tongue
we
in
were
cheek.
going to. Right, and it was going to be our way of kind of saluting some of the people who were on. Almost kind of our clip show.
Yeah, it was a recap show
episode.
essentially. Yeah,
Right.
exactly. And it was
and
only
then-
going to be about our show. It wasn't going to be like we're gonna be representative of the entire paranormal field here, and we're going to make selections and decide who deserves awards for things. It was just a way of kind of going back and kind of playing some of the best clips and poking some. It was like doing a spooky Crossroads about the entire year, essentially.
I was gonna, and part of what we were gonna say is like, dude, we should do an award show for the best movies that we like and the best television shows. And
Right.
it's gonna be like, what is the? And I think that was how we first started talking about it. Was, dude, what is your favorite ghost show?
Mm-hmm.
What is your favorite movie about this? And we're like, oh, dude, we should do an award show. You know what? And then it kind of grew into this other thing. And I think it would have been the equivalent of the Tom and Jerry episode where the thing is he's watching the movie so we can figure out how to beat Jerry. But really, it's just a recap of some of the best smacks in the head he got that past season.
Yeah, and we decided not to do it because it seemed like a lot of work, and we were lazy.
But really, hopefully those topics come back up again on a radio show of fine quality, such as Spooky Crossroads. All right, so I mean, I don't know. How do you feel about it initially? I guess my initial thing. I always feel like, okay, here's what I think. Okay, Tim, take it. What do you think? Let's argue, or let's not argue. Here's what I think. They're not serious. No one takes them seriously. So I think they do really no harm. Because I mean they although I did see that someone was nominating Andy Lake for one.
Mm-hmm.
That what's that chick's name?
Pam Padalano?
Is it Ryan Black? What's your name?
Oh, Riley Black?
Riley Black. Riley Black nominated Andy Lake for Best Paranormal Author, I think, which is cool. But then they were talking about radio shows, and I guess here's kind of like the cool part of it. They were nominating radio shows. Spooky South Coast nowhere represented. So obviously they were catering to a specific crowd, which is their Facebook crowd, right? So it's probably the people who consume their media. Because there were only 2 or 3 shows mentioned. I'm not saying, like, if you don't mention Spooky South Coast internationally, you are of no value. It was more of, there was like 73 responses, and they only mentioned 3 shows, none of which were ones that were recognizable to me. So it obviously was a group thing.
Right.
But it got me to click over. I mean, I couldn't listen to the shows because I fell into this maze of disasterness that didn't allow me to actually listen to the shows. But I'm like, that sounds like an interesting show. Maybe I'd want to hear it. So, and I think that's kind of what, I don't want to go see, or I don't think about plays very often except for when the Tonys are on. My wife is watching them. And then I'm like, well, that kind of seems like a cool play. I can't wait till they make a movie of it, and then I'll watch it.
Well, I do want to interrupt you for a second and go back to the has anything happened while reading the Jackie Barrett book thing, because something just popped in my head. I told you about my wedding ring, right?
Oh, yes.
I never even put two and two together till just now that it could be related. I'm not saying it
why?
is.
Were you reading it? Were you reading it when it happened? Like, were you reading
No,
Look at the
but
Lost Rings?
the night before, I was discussing with. I'm doing a library lecture coming up here in Mattapoisett, and I was in discussions with the woman about what I was going to do for the lecture, and I wanted to take it beyond. They wanted something on Lizzie Borden, and I wanted to take it beyond my usual Lizzie Borden, recap type of thing. So I was like, I'm going to put something together for you on, 92 Second Street, the Victorian Amityville Horror. And I spent the entire night before, like, working out a lot of the correlations between the Borden case and the DeFeo case and the paranormal aspects of it. And I wonder if I did something to myself in that regard. For those who don't know, last Friday, while I was at my day job, I lost my wedding ring, and it was the day before my 10th wedding anniversary. So, and it was, I mean, to a lot of people, they would be like, yeah, I lost my wedding ring, I had to go get another one, what I mean? But it kind of really hit me quite a bit. I was very upset by it, so
yeah, you were.
I wonder if maybe that was something to do with that. But anyway,
all I have to say is, thank heavens I don't wear my ring, because my wedding anniversary is coming up this weekend. So
yeah, I'm thinking about moving mine to a chain or something, but I don't know.
That's very legend of you.
Yes, I know, but it would keep it from coming off all my day job.
It would.
But to get back on the idea of the award shows, Dave brought up a good point in the chat room just now. They can have a negative effect. For one thing, a lot of the quote unquote drama that people are complaining about, this fosters a lot of that. This isn't about unity, because it's about a bunch of people who have a vested interest in certain things, partnering up with the other people that share those vested interests and essentially freezing out the rest. And there was an awards show, the Ghost Tales Television Network, which is just an online network where they have a bunch of paranormal theme shows, including our friends from Paranormal Expeditions. And they had an award show, but the award show was...
Whoa. Be very specific. Your friend from Paranormal Expeditions.
I was speaking in the editorial hour.
Okay.
Friends of Spooky South Coast. But the network was having its own awards, and so naturally the only people that were nominated for those awards were people that were on that network. But they didn't clarify it's an award show for shows on our network. They were putting them on as paranormal awards. Well, if that's the case, then why is it only shows from your network that are being nominated? And it's just it's forming a clique where you don't need to form a clique. Everybody seems to think that breaking off into cliques is hurting the field. Then why are you doing this? Why are you encouraging this? And when you think about it, if you're promoting crap, then it's going to make it look like crap is the predominant thing in the field. I'm not saying that all these things that are nominated are crap, but I'm just saying, like, you need to be able to be judgmental about what it is that you're handing these awards out to them. That's why when I was joking around with Greg on Facebook, we came up with the Paranormal Arbitrary Awards, or the Arbitrary Paranormal Awards, because that's what they all are. So these are the Arbies, so copyrighted. We're going to hand out little golden bronzed roast beef sandwiches, and the Arby Awards, and that's what we have. That's what it is. They're all just arbitrary. Right. Who's deciding this? The Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences is made up of people who are involved in the motion picture industry. The Tonys are selected by people who are involved in the Broadway musicals and involved in that industry.
I thought it was just people named Tony.
Yeah, that could be too. I don't really know that much about the Tonys because I'm heterosexual. But so there's all these possibilities.
That hurts.
I'm sorry. I figured we could say whatever we want. So, but that's the thing. Like, they're expert panels that are put together, and a lot of these panels are voted in. These people are voted in. They're giving screeners. They're given, packets. They're giving all the information that they need to make a decision. When you act in a television show and you want to be nominated for an Emmy Award, you submit that performance to the Emmy body to have it for their consideration.
To
Whereas,
think that those are straightforward. That's a joke, though. And this is, I guess, the Entertainment Weekly, you know, uh, film school person in me. Like, are you telling me Spielberg didn't make amazing movies for 20 years before Schindler's List? Are you telling me that anyone in this world cares about the King's Speech? I mean, those are the same thing. They freeze people out, regardless of whether they're authorities or not. They freeze people out and they promote certain people, and more importantly, they nominate people. They make it to people from all movie genres across the board doing it, but like pretty much they're promoting and they're nominating based on who they want at that award show.
right, but what they're doing too is they're doing it to maintain the integrity of their art. They're doing it to remind people that they're not movies, they're films. And they're doing it in a way to show you that, okay, Steven Spielberg made great movies, but we don't hold the subject matter of Close Encounters or Raiders of the Lost Ark or whatever you want to use as comparable to the subject matter and to the reach and the emotional depth and value of Schindler's List. So they're trying to, as much as it's wrong to do that and to kind of have that approach to it, all they're really guilty of is having a haughty attitude about what it is that they're judging. And
yeah, but Shrek was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Picture, man. I mean, we could have a whole tune in on Thursday nights when we talk.
But no, I mean, I understand. No, I understand what you're saying, but I'm just saying it's coming.
Film Crossroads.
It's coming from a different place and a different set of intentions.
No, I'm with you.
They're not making.
And obviously,
it's not based on, hey, which one of my friends do I want to see getting an award?
Right. And more importantly, it's especially back in the day, and you made great reference to this in your back and forth with Greg, was that, that used to be kind of the way to get your name out there, was to find a paranormal site that was getting hits and give them an award. So they would put the picture of the award on their top page,
and it would
so people would click over to you. Right, and it was probably a very effective way. I remember, what is it, Haunted America Tours? Yep. Gave, I think, Jeff Belanger, like, Writer of the Year, and 2 weeks later gave me Writer of the Year awards, and I'm like, okay, dude, first of all, you can't have Writer of the Year 2 weeks apart. Second of all, you can't even compare the kind of writing we were doing at that time, or even this time, or any time, except for maybe the distant future, of like what Jeff is doing and what I'm doing. I'm, especially at that time, I was a local writer who had just had a national book come out. How could you possibly compare those things? How can you give me an award for being the writer of the year when no one knows who the fuck I am? And so,
How about, and I'm not belittling your work at all.
No, it's fine. I do.
But I'm sure a good part of it was because you answered their email.
Right, and that's exactly what it was. They wanted to interview me, and I was doing media for them. I was reviewing books for them, and all of a sudden, boom, I'm a superstar.
And that's, like there's a question here from Master Shake in the chat room. How are endless shows, awards, media hype, etc. furthering study of the paranormal? Ghost shows jumped the shark long ago. Well, that's an interesting point because, the people who are picking these awards are going to have a category, Best Paranormal Television Show. And they're going to nominate Ghost Adventures, Ghost Hunters, Haunted Collector, and I don't know, what's another one because I don't watch them. So, what's the other one there? The Paranormal Witness.
You're talking to the wrong person.
Yep. Paranormal Witness. So say they nominate those 4 shows. Well, it doesn't matter to them which one they pick as the winner because their only goal in nominating that award is to get one of those 4 outlets to recognize the fact that this rinky-dink website gave them an award. They're trying to piggyback off of them. I mean, there's no value in these awards, and anybody that's upset about not winning one or not getting nominated, and I've seen fights on some of these Facebook threads about these awards, about how can you not nominate this show? How can you nominate this group and not this group? And you know what? What difference does it make? Who cares what, Acme Paranormal Investigations of Iowa decides is the investigator of the year for their awards that they're putting on? They don't know every investigator. They don't know what they've done. And who cares? If you're in this to win Investigator of the Year, get the fuck out of the field because you're in it for the wrong reason.
Okay, but does everything someone related to the paranormal does... Sorry, advertisement if I'm a little distracted. do they have to further the field with every single thing they do? I mean, does all of their actions within that field have to be leaning towards the goal of making progress in terms of
some
show
of it though
centers?
is
I mean,
some of it's just to have fun. I mean, and if that's the goal of these awards, it's just to have a little fun, to create a little interaction, and to have some sense of community. Well, then
to
that's
wear a
fine.
suit. I mean, I
Huh?
would like to see a lot of these people in suits.
Right.
And
I'd like to see
using
them
it.
wearing their ball gowns and whatever else. And
Exactly.
who are you wearing? Oh, I'm wearing Cafe Press. But anyway, the sorry.
Dude, that could be the funniest thing you've ever said.
But anyway, so but I mean, if that's the idea, then fine. But you need to have that almost as a disclaimer, like these awards are just for fun. It's just a way to have some conversation and some interaction between ourselves, and but otherwise, it's more just it's a distraction to what you're trying to do. And I'm not saying that you have to be in this field to further it 24 hours a day, but there's you have to kind of be upfront about it. And I think that that's the problem, is so many of the people that are involved in this are not upfront about what their real goal is. Their real goal is to try to get themselves on TV. Their real goal is to try to get themselves famous. It's the only small pond that you can jump into and be a big fish right away without actually getting your feet wet. Wow, that was kind of a lot deeper than I... Whoa, see? It just doesn't stop. The analogy that won't end. But
you went from Cafe Press to that deepness.
Yes, the multifaceted.
I'm just gonna lay back and let you talk for a little bit.
People say to me, all right, well, what's your goal? What's your goal with Spooky South Coast? My goal is to be an entertaining radio host. My show happens to be about the paranormal. And it's something that I want to learn about and something that I want to find out about and I want to have interactions with people about. But when I'm doing that show, I don't look at it as my goal is to further the field. I mean, we get defensive about doing that, but the way I see it is it's the people that we're talking to that are the ones that are actually furthering the field. We just want to kind of hear their voice, and we kind of want to spotlight their work. And that's what these awards could do. It could be a way to spotlight their work. But if you're going to do that, then it can't be done in the way that it is. It can't just be like, we're going to have an awards show or an awards, dissemination. Here's a list of categories, and nominate for us who you think it is, and then we're going to count the number of votes, and that person wins.
And I think connected with this, which is, the other kind of big thing that was rolling around in my head as I was reading things back and forth, is the other side of this, which is the people who are nominated or what have you. I mean, do they have the right to be nominated? Things like that. And I have been in 3, I guess, crappy fields in this aspect. For a very very short time in high school, I was a musician, and then a little bit into college. And then in college, I was a filmmaker who switched over to the writing department. And now in my adulthood, I am, into the paranormal. I am part of the paranormal community, whatever that might mean. And all 3 of these big kind of undertakings I've taken on, thank heavens it's none of this in teaching. Why do I have to constantly apologize for trying to make money, for trying to be exposed? All 3 of those fields, not so much the music, because we were kind of at that time, mimicking, our favorite hair metal bands. But especially in the filmmaking, writing things like, man, if more than 5 people read this, you're freaking selling out, man. And I'm like, well, wait a minute, then why am I writing if I don't want people to read it? I don't get it. Yes, I'm purging something from me, whatever, but so what I was seeing from a lot of people who were nominated, and some of it was false because, dude, if you didn't read the post in the first place, you wouldn't be like, oh, no, I don't deserve that award. What were you doing reading the post about it anyway? I've been nominated for an award. You read about it. Oh, no, I don't deserve. Let me post that I don't deserve the award. But the fact that I feel, and this kind of hits into another level, the conversation you were having with Katie, is that you know, I am constantly having to apologize for having a book.
Mhm.
You know, I am constantly having to apologize for presenting information. You know, for putting on the head or the hat of being an expert in something. Which I never claimed to do. I mean, I don't even, claim to necessarily be an authority even on the paranormal or an authority on, for an example, the Bridgewater Triangle. I was talking to Aaron today, Aaron Kazir,
Mhm.
and I'm like, dude, I am not an authority on the Bridgewater Triangle. I'm the authority on the Bridgewater Triangle of 15 years ago, of 10 years ago. There are so many other people who are doing more interesting things. So I don't claim to be that, but why would I have to even think about having to apologize for that in the first place? Like,
Right.
why can't I be just knowledgeable? And why do we down people, and especially in this field, who present themselves as having knowledge, not being authorities, not being the end all be all? And I know very few people who are, well, I guess I shouldn't say that, but so if you were talking about Lloyd Arbach in the conversation I was talking about with doing this with, but I mean, why do I have to have reviews of my book or people come at me and be like, why are you claiming to be an authority? There is no authority on the paranormal because it's so unknown. I'm like, who cares if we don't know why? I can talk about why we don't know why. I can talk about the different aspects of us not knowing why. You know, that's why do I have to defend myself because I'm talking about something that is hard to wrap your fingers around, and I'm theorizing about things or I'm presenting it. How is that offending people? That's kind of disturbing to me.
First of all, and I'm going to preface this by saying I know I'm a guy who sells tickets to go on ghost hunts. So I'll just preface this statement by saying that. But the same people who are accusing you of being a sellout for making money off the paranormal are the same people that are paying $250, $300 to go investigate haunted locations with people who were on ghost shows that were canceled 3 or 4 years ago. So keep that in mind. It's one of those consider the source type of things. But you're not an authority on the paranormal. You're an authority on certain aspects within the paranormal. And that's the thing is because they think that because you're writing about it, you're automatically saying that this is so. And you're not. You're not going, you've never written a book where you've said, unequivocally, a ghost is the soul of a dead person who is trapped on our plane of existence because they have unfinished business on Earth. And I know that for a fact. But that doesn't mean that you can't be authoritative about the things that we do know about them. And that's
Were you talking specific you or editorial you there?
Editorial you.
Okay, good. All right.
Because that's the misconception here is, listen, everybody in the world is an authority on what they know. But it doesn't mean they're right. But it just means that they can speak authoritatively to it.
Right.
And so this whole thing about there are no experts, fuck that. There are experts. There's people who do this 24 hours a day, 12 hours a day, and this is what they do all the time. I would say that Jeff Belanger is an expert on the paranormal. It's not only is it all that he does, but he is constantly at the forefront of it, and he has his own take on it, but that doesn't mean that he doesn't see and learn all the opposing viewpoints either.
Right.
You know what I mean? I would not consider myself to be at that level because I just don't put enough effort into it. Not that I don't put an effort into it, but I just don't have the time to dedicate to it, say. And I think that that's where the delineation comes from, is those who are experts, quote unquote, or those are the people that this is what they do. This is their career. It's what they do for a living. And the people who are saying there are no experts are the people who can only do it on the weekends. And therefore, they don't want to think that there is an air of superiority to a Jeff Belanger, to a Lloyd Auerbach, to a John Zaffis, people like this, because they don't have that level of experience, or they don't have that level of involvement. So,
I guess it's one of those situations where I take the sour grapes aspect of it, and that's all kind of one side of it. But then me, I'm a person who's got to dwell on when someone comments about something. Even I'm like, dude, you're shut up, you're an asshole. There's still that part of me that's like, let me dwell a little bit on what they said and process it and see what I think about it. And it just really got to me because I've constantly been in the field where people think that the moment that you do what you're actually trying to do, the moment you actually explore ideas, the moment you actually write about those ideas, the moment you want to play in front of more than 7 people, it's like, man, you've done it the wrong way. You know, what are you doing? It's crazy. And I'm like, no, it's not. Like, I feel like someone can get on whatever they get on, soapbox or what have you, and talk, right? And that there's no greater gift we have in this country or any other country than doing that, right? And it's up to the audience to absorb that and process it and like it or don't like it. But I don't think we should attack the people who are doing the talking.
Right. But I mean, that's,
and I think,
but that was kind of my issue that I took with Katie a little bit in that thread earlier. And for those who don't know, just go take a look at my Facebook page. The other day, Lloyd Auerbach announced that he was offering his mentoring services to people in the paranormal for a fee.
Which sounds creepy. Let's put everything else aside. That sounds weird.
It just doesn't seem right. And mentoring was the wrong word to use.
Yeah, I think Mr. Miyagi doesn't advertise.
Right. He tried to use
through your path.
He tried to use the word mentoring. I'm assuming, not to put words in his mouth, but I assume that he was trying to express the level of intimacy, the level of involvement, the level of closeness that you would work with him.
You're making it creepier.
I know. But he's trying to, and this is just my guess, show that for what you're paying for, you're going to get my undivided attention. It's not going to be like one of my courses where it's a prepackaged, lecture series, worksheet type of thing. I don't even know what he does in his courses, but I'm just saying, like, he's, I think he was trying to express that there was going to be more one-on-one involvement than there would be in the class setting. But the fact that he's using that word mentoring also opens it up to, well, you're not supposed to really charge people to mentor them. You charge people to tutor them. There's a difference. And we got kind of back and forth in it, and my friend Bill Prince got involved a little bit in the discussion. And it basically turned into Katie defending Lloyd's ability to do this. And nobody's questioning that. But the thing that kept bothering me about it is, I mean, obviously Katie is a believer and maybe even a disciple of Lloyd Auerbach. I don't know her whole background. But she definitely puts, we know how she feels about the reality TV ghost hunters.
She feels about everything.
Yeah, that's true. But
it's kind of the cool part of it.
Yeah.
Also sometimes the agitated part about it.
So, but she's defending Lloyd's reasoning for doing this. And I'm like, you got to stop, because you're essentially saying, hey, it's okay because it's Lloyd Auerbach doing it, and Lloyd Auerbach has a different level of integrity than all these reality TV stars. No, I don't think so. I seem to remember Lloyd Auerbach being everywhere on TV talking about this stuff when I was a kid. And I seem to remember Lloyd Auerbach getting involved in some of these ghost shows. And I seem to remember, and correct me if I'm wrong, if anybody knows this, but I thought there was some tension between Lloyd and the ghost hunters when they did the distillery. And that was kind of Lloyd's area that he has been investigating for a long time, and that he was upset that he wasn't involved in that. I may be wrong. It could have just been some rumor that I heard behind the scenes, but make no mistake about it. I mean, I'm pretty confident in my belief of reading between the lines that Lloyd Auerbach wishes he was involved in this stuff, and there just was not a spot for him in there, and it kind of passed him by. That is just my feeling that I get, and that's, the there is no difference between what they're doing and what he's doing. To me, it's apples and oranges to some degree, but it's all fruit.
Right. And we talked about the whole course thing, the whole certificate thing, certifying thing. We've done that before. We had the Ron situation happen earlier this year. And we've obviously debated that kind of thing before. But it just seems to me like, how can we not have figureheads to look forward to? Like, how can we not have mentors out there, regardless of whether they're creepy?
Right.
But like, who the hell am I supposed to look up to? then who am I supposed to read? If no one is an authority, how do I friggin' learn anything? If no one is doing it the right way because they're all not doing it a specific way that you want them to do it, then how am I supposed to learn every single method so that I can see and take them out into the field and judge them and see what works? Like, why are we so hesitant to pat some paranormal people on the back? And I know part of the reason is because there's a lot of crappy ass people out there. But we also seem to be like, so willing to accept that this field is so vast and ununderstandable.
It's you're putting too much into it. It goes back to this. I'm you and I both we're kind of younger guys, so we were not of the same era of when Lloyd and the Warrens and all these people were making all these media appearances. But I don't remember reading about or hearing about people crying out in the 70s that there are no experts in the paranormal. There are no experts bullshit started when there was a whole bunch of amateurs. That until those amateurs were out there doing this, there was no reason to condone the experts. So that's where it all comes from. And
but experts themselves are like minimizing what they do. And I think Eric Altman is an excellent example of this. I think he was nominated for one of those awards or something. And then in his post, he was talking about how, overly, and it felt like he felt he needed to be overly humble. And he was like, there really is no definitive answers, and I really can't. I'm just golly gee, I'm just a person who thinks what they think. And I've been in that I have felt in that same position, like where I need to minimize what I've done because, well, golly gee, there's just, there's so much we don't know.
Well, there's two different reasons to do that, though. Some people will do that because they don't feel comfortable standing up and raising their hand. And then other people are doing it because, and I'm not saying that you or Eric did this, but I know that there are other people that do it, where they do that because it's the role they're supposed to play, and they figure that if they do that, more people will get on their side for it. See, that's the thing, is there's such a dichotomy in the paranormal of...
Right.
Like, you can never... There's maybe 5 people in the whole field that I can honestly say I know are in this not to make money and not to, feel like they're a big fish. And there's not that many. It's because everybody wants to have, their thing. And to some people it can be your thing, Obviously to us it's our thing. It's what we're good at. It's what we're able to do.
And but why not make a shitload? Why do we have to not be able to make a shitload of money?
But that's the thing. We're not shy about that.
Right. When you and I think about spooky South Coast.
By the way, 5 people was an exaggeration. I mean, I'm just saying it's a small. I'll say 5%.
Okay. Am I one of them, Tim?
Yeah. No. Okay. You're not one of them. Neither am I.
When I think about the future of spooky South Coast, or even the future of my writing or whatever, I'm not thinking like, wow, you know what? I would really like to be in a shack, struggling to survive, knee deep in debt, getting the best story out there. No, I'm thinking like, you know what, dude? I would love to make enough money to quit my job so I can devote more time to this, so I can do even more cooler stuff with my writing.
Right,
or with the show. I mean, none of us are thinking, and I don't think you'd really think that in. I've got a friend who has, I think he was on his way to his doctorate, smartest person I ever know. He speaks like, and this is not hyperbole, he speaks like 15 different languages, is fluent in most of them. I mean, the guy wrote a friggin' dictionary for a language that's dying out. I mean, we're talking genius level. What does he do? He heads an ESOL program in Boston. That's generally a dude that's like, money? Oh, yeah, that I need to buy food with for my kids and stuff. Like, he care less whether he can, above what he needs to survive in life. But that's him. Me, I want to, I don't want to be rich. I could care less whether I'm rich. I want to be in a situation where I can do really amazing stuff, And more importantly, where people can actually hear me. So I'm not just freaking talking to 4 people in a chat room, but we're talking to 1 million people in a chat room.
Right.
All of whom are kind of like listening to what we're saying and interacting and disagreeing with us and calling us assholes, but also calling us amazing and geniuses and and maybe even every once in a while, telling me that they love me.
Well, Master Shake had a point in the chat room just now that, you know, not trying to make money as paranormal researchers or investigators. We're trying to make money as writers, as entertainers, because that's our skill. That's what we can do. And not to sound conceited, but I think I'm pretty damn good at both things. And I think I would like to be rewarded for it, for having to do it for so long for free, and other people benefiting from it, and to not be paid for it. So sure, I should be able to get paid for things. And with Legend Trips, Jeff and I aren't selling you ghosts. We're selling you a fun night. We're selling you a great experience, what we hope is a great experience. And that's what our thing is. Our thing isn't making the paranormal happen on command for you. Our thing is being able to put together a fun event that is entertaining and fun and interactive, and that's what we do. So this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to make money off what our skills are, and it just so happens that it's within the paranormal field. But I try to never portray myself as a paranormal investigator. I try not to really portray myself as a paranormal researcher either, but that's the phrasing that I make people use if they're going to use something in their introduction of me. For example, one of my library lectures, the description just hit the newspaper, and it calls me one of the world's most recognized researchers of the paranormal. It's like, well, where does that come from? Like, where does the idea that I'm the world's most recognized researcher of the paranormal come from?
Imagine if you could put award-winning.
Imagine if what?
Imagine if you could put award-winning next to that too.
Yes, I know. Well, I'm actually now because I'm going to be published in that book. I'm now a scholar of the paranormal.
Oh, okay.
But that phrasing comes from the fact that the most recognizable in the world. Well, it says on your website that you're one of the world's leading paranormal talk shows. Well, yeah, because there's like 5 of them. So it's like, I mean, real ones, not. But so then it just becomes that's the word that people feel comfortable with for you, is to call you a researcher of paranormal. Because what else are they going to call you? A paranormal junkie, a paranormal file, like somebody who's just has a strong interest in this. So it becomes kind of the word they're using. But it's hard. Yes, enthusiast, Dave. Good idea. Paranormal enthusiast. But then I say that too.
How about this? Tim Weisberg is one of the foremost voices in the paranormal.
That's good. I'm getting that put on my business card.
Put that in your bio.
But really, we're all just hobbyists. That's what we are. We're hobbyists.
I don't know what that means. Define that for me.
A hobbyist?
Yeah, I mean, like, does a hobbyist just mean you don't get paid? You know what I'm saying? Like, in other words,
no, a hobbyist would mean that it's something that you do in addition to what you already do. It's not your main forte, but it's something that you have a strong interest and knowledge in. So it's not that you're because like if you played a sport, you would be a golfer, you would be a swimmer. You know what I mean? So a hobbyist is somebody who is doing something that is, I don't know.
Okay, so let me ask you.
You got me stumped a little bit on how I
know because people, we've said, I mean, you and I have done interviews where we've talked about this before, like for other places, and we've talked about it, obviously, on this show and the other show, and the other show, the good show, and we throw that out, and it is a very, it explains a lot to say it that way, to phrase it that way. But for example, like, so by your definition, my dad spent 45 years, 50 years or so, 45 years, I think, pretty much split between 2 jobs. The man had 2 jobs in his life, and both were the same job, just for 2 different companies. And it had to do with private investigation, security, things like that. And so his professional career were those things, but his passion was art, right? And so he spent many hours, many hours, focusing on his art, perfecting his craft, evolving his craft, doing all these kinds of things. Was he a hobbyist because that wasn't his primary thing? When that was his passion, that was his driving thing. I think, and we are as guilty. You and I are as guilty about this because I use that same expression before as well. I'm like, and how often do we compare paranormal investigating to stamp collecting when we're trying to create, when we're trying to show some glaring errors with the reasoning of some people. But am I a hobbyist? I don't. I think the paranormal. I dream ghosts.
How about we change it? How about, we'll get rid of the hobbyist idea, all right? Because your father, and I didn't know the man, but and I wish I could have.
He's not dead. You can still go and talk to him if you want.
Well, does he still live here?
Yeah, he's in Nashua.
That's a whole other world to me.
My dad would flip out if anyway. He's like, dude, why is there? One of his good friends is Karen Mossy. They were friends for years and didn't know that they had a me in common.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Well, all right. So your dad, though, I would say, is probably an artist because he probably sees the world through that perspective. And there are people in the paranormal who probably see the world through that perspective. That's I would call a paranormalist, which is usually what I tell people to call me, by the way. But there are some people, like I would say Dave Francis, for example, who's in the chat room, is a paranormalist because he's constantly looking at things through that lens. Right. But if it's not something that it's part of your everyday life and it's part of your everyday thought process, then you're a hobbyist. And you have people who are hobbyists who are trying to put themselves on the same level as the paranormalists. And it doesn't work. And by the way, and let's say, to go back to that thread with Katie, you don't have to be a parapsychologist to investigate this phenomena either. Like that's another misconception that I think people have. Parapsychology would certainly help, but it's no different than saying that you need to be a zoologist to be a cryptozoologist. It would be much better if you are, but...
I mean, isn't really parapsychology one branch of what you're looking at? So, like, what if you don't view the world and the paranormal world through a parapsychology lens?
Right.
And I think just to very quickly, just so because it's out there, I just want to address Kara in the chat room when she says, why do we need labels anyway? And I think, I think to some degree the labels, for some people, define who they are in their approach.
Right.
It definitely is the outside world's way that they view your approach, but I think we ourselves kind of like by what we call ourselves, define
people need to
how we're going to
self-identify.
do it. Right. I mean, and so I know that it's very we can say we don't want labels, but I sometimes don't like the ambiguity of my own kind of place in this bigger kind of paranormal world. It's kind of like, what do I do? What am I? I mean, and most of the time I'm like, yeah, who gives a shit what I am? Like I am me, I guess.
See.
Then it's like, well, yeah, but that doesn't define anything, so therefore you're not really doing as much as you could be because you should be open to things, but what do you want to present to people?
It's kind of an interesting conversation to have with the group that's currently in the chat room because I know Dave, I know Kira, I don't know Master Shake, but I'm sure that I do, and I just don't recognize the screen name. Well, I recognize the screen name, but I'm sure I just don't know who it is behind it. But you're looking at least with Kira and Dave, two people who are in this, but they're in this independently, and they're not in that group mentality. And if you were in that group mentality, then you would understand the need within that group to have these labels for one another. First of all, it's like there's a built-in hierarchy. If you can go around calling yourself a ufologist, well, that makes you 95% smarter than everybody that's just out there as a UFO investigator. It's being able to put that tag onto yourself to make it feel like what you're doing is worthwhile. Like, for example, I know people who are sports writers who will not introduce themselves as such. They say that they are writers or journalists because to say sports writer is beneath them almost. And so... And they say, I'm not a sports writer. I'm a writer who just happens to write about sports. And that's just, it's the need to have that value on what it is that it's a way to put value on what it is that you're spending your time on.
And my favorite one, the one that, the label that I was given that I love the most was when you called me an analytical folklorist.
Yes.
Dude, that makes me sound wicked friggin' smart.
It does, but it also perfectly describes where it is that you're coming from. A folklorist just categorizes the stories. And I think there's quite a few of those who are very good at what they do, but then there's people who go beyond that and actually make the connections and see the patterns and see the reasonings behind it and can say, okay, here's this story that was in folklore and here's what happened in society as a result of it. So that's kind of where that was coming from. And
Yeah, I think I need a degree for that, though. That sounds way too smart for me. Mine
maybe,
is more of like
I don't think you need
hobby, folklorist hobbyist, I guess. Maybe, I don't know. And it's one of the things that, like I said, really hit me is that those people who are doing something, and I'm not going to judge whether it's good or bad, but they're doing something, felt the need because of the climate to minimize what they're doing and basically be like, no, no one's an expert. No, I'm not an authority on anything. No, there's sure there's stuff out there. There's some I know and some I don't know, but hey, and I think that's framed in terms of like, here's what I know. Here's the links to other things that are interesting. Both hide. You know what I'm saying? Like, find other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like, use this as a link. Use this as a source. Understand it's a source. If you wanted to get, go falling back to my literature, my analytical folklorist ways. If I want, the social commentary on something, if I want to know what a poem means, I read 5 different commentaries about it. I read,
right.
And that's okay. Each person is a friggin' authority. They're an authority on their aspect of it. And
then what can you
do?
do?
You said you're an authority on yourself. You said it earlier.
What can you do from that? You can read 5 different analyses of a poem, and then you can write your own essay with your own thoughts.
Right. And the cream rises. I guess that's it. Always comes. We've always got that should be spooky crossroads. The cream rises because that seems to be our theme. What we finally boiled down to. And
the cream rises, and then we make sure that we spoil it once we have that cream. We make it go bad.
More importantly, now the cream is being told, don't rise, don't be extraordinary. Just admit that you're a small speck in this world. No, I'm a fucking superstar. Be a superstar every once in a while. It's okay. It's okay to shine. Stay gold, pony boy.
Well, now you sound like the parents that created this pussy generation that we have coming up right now, but that's a whole different topic for another show. Remember back when we were kids and it was like okay to fail at things and it was okay to not feel like you were awesome all the time? That we were better people for it?
Right, but now, I think that I try to create conflict and tell my children as well as my students they're pretty crappy most of the time.
Right.
Only so that I can accentuate the few times that they are extraordinary. And be like, wow, that was great. Because then, I want them craving that kind of attention from me.
Chris Balzano, killing the Kumbaya generation one person at a time.
One student at a time. My son's trophy for participation was way too big. But I had seen no problem with, like, giving a kid a medal and being like, hey, you participated, nice job. This person who won, they got something better. So I don't see. There's such a lack of participation in so many things. I don't think that giving someone something for getting out there and doing it at least is horrible.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think it makes pussies. But I think we need to reward people that do really well. There you go. So I guess on that note, because we are reaching our scheduled at least 2-hour window here. The night is slowly closing in, so it's about time that we tone things down a little bit. We say goodbye to our audience. We think about greater days to come next week when we have other things that agitate us or make us feel really hot and bothered, or that inspire us. I'm waiting for the spooky crossroads where we've been really inspired. Maybe this week, Linda Godfrey and the kind of wave that'll create amongst the followers and the people who like us and people who listen to us and even what's going on. Maybe the vibe will be a little bit different next week. I'm waiting for the positive Spooky Crossroads episode. I'm sure we'll have. Yes, I will. I will never shave my beard. Well, I'm sure I will shave my beard at some point, but my head is actually is going to be shaved a lot before that. So I'm hoping that you don't see me this weekend. I'll explain that a little later. I'm hoping that I'll be here next Wednesday to get some wacky things going on around here. But for me, Chris Balzano, your analytical folklorist, for the voice of the paranormal, Tim Weisberg, and for all those who fall under the sizable umbrella of the Spooky South Coast Spooky TV network, I am Chris Balzano. This is Spooky Crossroads, and that's what's been haunting me.